Hey guys, Professor Bill of Comic Book University and Captain America Annual issue number 1. I shouldn't cover the shield, right? So this is the first annual of the new run, but it's not the current writers and it's not the current creative team working on it, which is fine. That's usually how these sort of things work, the annuals. And I was really looking forward to this, and now I've got some interesting commentary on this, but let's first get into the creative team because they kind of deserve it. Okay, so writer Teenie Howard. I hope I'm pronouncing these names right, by the way. Pencilers, Chris Sprouse with Ron Lim. Awesome to have Ron Lim on another comic book. Inkers, Carl Story, Walden Wong, and Scott Hanna. Color artist, Jesus Abertov. Love that dude. Also loves me some Israel Silva and Eric Arcianega. That guy's not on enough comic books, strangely enough. Okay, letterer, VC's Joe Caramonga. Cover, Chris Sprouse, Carl Story, and Romulo Fayaro Jr. Variant cover by Kari Andrews. I love seeing Kari Andrews in more stuff, especially if I'm pronouncing his name correct. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. So, oh, hey, whoa, okay, there it is. Captain America created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. I always say these things because it's important for everybody to know who created these characters. For me, at least. I feel it's important for everybody to know. So we already knew that this comic book was going to be Captain America and Bucky come across a group of refugees or, people who are holed up in some kind of a barn someplace, and they have to hunker down for the night and try and survive against an invading force of Germans. And by Germans, I very specifically mean Nazis. Those scum should absolutely be separated from all the rest of human society. They are humans, but they're not like the rest of us. They are not normal. This is not normal. So, yeah, I thought that this was actually going to be something more akin to my own personal military background. I thought this was going to be great. Teenie Howard was apparently not in the military. I can tell easily by looking at this comic book. Captain America is wearing, I guess that's a watch that also serves as a compass, or maybe it's just a compass. Either way, we would never wear something like that without some kind of a cover over it because it would start a glare. Also, we don't say aye when you're in the Army. That's a Navy thing to say. And at the time, I know that the Marines did say the same thing because they were just an arm of the Navy, but much like the Air Force was an arm of the Army at the time. And there was a whole bunch of other things in here that bothered me. But at the same time, in the real military, we would have had some kid with a machine gun and some dude with the bright clothes and an unbreakable shield and no gun. So, and yes, that's actually important for the story. I know that the story has changed several times throughout history, and Ed Brubaker pretty much broke through that mold and said, no, Captain America absolutely used a gun during World War II. He absolutely killed people, but Bucky was the one who was able to do the things that the face of America couldn't. So, like, he shouldn't, absolutely shouldn't. But yes, this is the older version of Captain America, the older mentality version of Captain America who fought through World War II, never actually killed anyone. Even when Bucky's shooting his rifle at people, he's like shooting at the ground and scaring them and then kicking them in the face and knocking them unconscious. Hope that we can get to what we're going to do before those Germans wake up, before those Nazis wake up. Listen, if it's okay to go to war, it's okay to shoot people and kill people, all right? But that is not the story that Teenie Howard wanted to tell, and I respect that. I do. So, what do you call it? He comes across this woman who is trying to kill him, more by just trying to get away, but like she shoots a couple of shots at Captain America and Bucky, and then she even throws a German grenade at them, which is like, dude, are you freaking kidding me right now? But they let it go. Our heroes let it go, and they realize very quickly that she's not actually trying to hurt them so much as get away. So I get it. It's a weird way of showing it, especially if you think that everybody's coming after you. And plus, she has no idea who Captain America is. None of the people holed up in this barn know who he is, because they're making fun of him, like, you look like you're part of the marching band. What the hell is this? You know, we're hoping for the Allied forces to come, and they send the freaking marching band. What the hell? I really did like that line. Apparently Bucky did also. They save her from what's called a bouncing Betty. That is a kind of landmine that you step on it, and the second that you release pressure from it, it shoots up in the air approximately 4 to 6 feet, and then it explodes. So anybody within about a 5 meter, there's about a 5 meter kill radius, so all the way around. And after that, it can wind up just, the shrapnel winds up jacking you up in a really bad way. So yeah, that was those and toe poppers, those are probably the scariest freaking landmines you come across, because you might actually survive them, and you don't want to be in the condition that you're going to be in if you survive them. So quick little note there. Anyway, this wasn't really what I was looking for. I was hoping that the whole night was going to be more of a survival sort of thing, and it wasn't. They spend the night, but it's barely anything, and they're just trying to get to a radio tower to call people in. I get it. Most of what was said and what, yeah, whatever. I get it. But for all intents and purposes, this was advertised as one thing, and they kind of gave us that briefly and then moved on to something else. At first, I was going to not necessarily complain, but kind of roll my eyes a little bit, because there are 3 people in this barn. One person is Jewish, one person is a Soviet who is a homosexual, and the third person is a Roma. She's a gypsy, specifically a Roma gypsy. For those of you who don't know, the Roma are the most populous and the most well-known of the gypsies, but they're not all gypsies are Roma. All right? So, but this was a Romani woman. Anyway, at first I was thinking, like, geez, the typical trope, right? These 3 typical, but then in my mind, before I even read what happened later on, in my mind I had to rectify that with myself and say, listen, I have read a lot of military history. When I find something new that I'm not familiar with, I also read about that. I love all history, specifically like Native American history and military history. Both things I have very close ties to. But so I'm very familiar with the 3 most hated groups by the Nazis. So I had to remind myself that not everybody's going to be familiar with this. So yeah, I just kind of put that to the side. And then later on, I read the back of this book. So the back of this book is one of my favorite things. I love it when a writer or somebody, but usually the writer, goes and gives us a conversation about why he or she decided to write so-and-so book. Teenie Howard, I had to look her up briefly. I don't know a whole lot about her, but by her own admission, this is her first book on Marvel. So congratulations. If you come across this video, congratulations. This is a really huge deal, and you're writing my favorite character. So more power to you. I hope to see more from you in the future, especially because of what was written here. When we write, and a lot of people don't like this. There are a bunch of, you know, the other comic book channels, you know, they're not really doing reviews, more like indoctrination into their hateful thinking. You don't believe me, I can explain to you exactly how they do that, but you kind of know because you watch them if you know what I'm talking about and you're feeling a little bit butthurt. But the point is that a lot of these guys are going to say something to the effect of, or they often say something to the effect of, they're trying to spread their agenda. This is not an agenda. This is Teenie Howard's, and I hope I'm not butchering her name, but this is Teenie Howard's life story. Not her life story, but her grandmother's life story. One of the characters in here actually has her, I think it was her grandmother's full name, which I thought was actually really beautiful, because her grandmother went through things like this. She's actually Romani, so she obviously didn't experience this specifically, but now all of her struggles, and those are a genuinely persecuted peoples. Gypsies are genuinely persecuted people. It really hasn't stopped to this day. It's just different faces and different names to the people who are doing the persecution and different levels of persecution. But persecution is still persecution. But yeah, these guys, they went through a lot of crap. Well, Tinny Howard wrote this, wrote her grandmother, whoever this was, into this story. And just as I'm going to say is very similar to what she was saying, she's rewriting her story a little bit, just a little bit, so that now she's a part of Captain America's story. Damn, that is beautiful. That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. I wish that there were a way to write Captain America into the Native American story, you know what I'm saying? Without having to do the typical time travel trope, right? But that is a really noble thing to do. I really like that. When we write, we're going to always write about ourselves or our life experiences, whatever it is. So I had absolutely no issues with that. For the most part, this was a very topographical comic book. They didn't get deep into anything. It's only one issue. It's an annual, you know what I'm saying? But it's not a deep comic book. And this is a deep subject matter. So I feel like Tinny held back a lot, and I would like to see a story that she writes where she doesn't. I guess I'm going to have to read a typical story of hers, but whatever it is, I would like to see her actually delve into the story. Instead of just, well, I'm writing for an annual, let me just try and do something in general. I'm glad that she got to do this. I genuinely am, and I am looking forward to seeing more of her writing. But to talk about the things that I didn't like about the comic book, I do feel that the comic book, one, was topographical. It didn't delve into anything. We didn't penetrate into the epidermis very deeply, you know? And more than that, if we're going to advertise this comic book as it's Captain America and Bucky having to protect a group of people in a barn overnight until help can arrive, but they had to go out and search for the help, which is fine for all intents and purposes, and maybe this had to have been told in an arc rather than an issue. I understand that, but this is what we were given. And I was genuinely hoping for, like, even if it was Nazi vampires, for crying out loud, I was really hoping to see, instead of bar the door with this firewood that we found, and he throws like one piece of firewood to him. All I saw was one piece of firewood, like one quartered piece of firewood, like brought in from the outside and brought in and handed to tossed to Bucky. I want to actually see them nailing things to the wall. I want to see, more of the snipers. I want to see, we found a basement, you know what I'm saying? What can we do with this? And I want to see them actually trying to dig in, maybe dig a hole out. I want to see something like that, because that's what I was promised in the adverts, and kind of didn't get that. So, good comic book. Could have been a great comic book. This had the potential to be a great comic book. It's one of the things I say about DC Comics all the time. Don't rush the frickin' story. And now once in a while, you're going to get that in a Marvel comic book as well. So this was a story that was kind of rushed. I wouldn't say shoehorned, but almost. So the worst part of about this comic book was that it didn't have time to really breathe. And this was a comic book that needed breath. All right, guys, that's it for me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.